Definitely want to go around the corner to the left. I should put a marker. I do have a marker. Over to the right, sorry. I'm going to have to deal with whatever that is. Croakmaw. Yeah, I don't think so, buddy. Level 33. What if you're one of the 30% of the people in the world who doesn't have broadband internet? Then you have to... No, 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 no. Go, go, go. Rest, rest, rest. He came for me. I heard the bill. Ha ha ha! Fuck you, buddy. That's awesome. I got it before he came and attacked me. Anyway, that still comes back to an infrastructure thing. Like, if you live in a part of the world where you don't have broadband internet, I'm sorry, but that's, you know, game companies can't accommodate every single, like, a good example is my brother. My brother does not have, my brother lives in the middle of nowhere. He has Starlink. Starlink works. It's great. Is it perfect? No. No. So I have two connections at my house. I live in the middle of nowhere also. I have a cable connection, like an old school copper coaxial. We're going to run cable TV and cable internet to your house in the same box. I have that. That was my primary connection for the first year and a half we were here. The telephone company ran fiber optic through the heart of town, like a gigabit service. But I don't live in the middle of town. They wouldn't run it to my house. But about a year and a half after I lived here, a local company ran fiber optic to the telephone pole outside of my home. And so I was able to get a fiber optic connection with that company, which is my second one. And I started off, it was a 15 up, 15 down. And now over time, they have upgraded it. It's now a 50 up, 50 down. So my cable internet is a 300 down, 28 up. And it fails frequently. A few times a month it'll fail. And then I have my fiber optic connection, which is more stable, 50 up, 50 down. But they both share a fiber optic backbone between our small little town and the big city, which is 3 hours away. So I'm reliant upon infrastructure as much as anybody else, because the infrastructure between my tiny town and the big city, if there is an issue between my tiny town and the big city, both of my connections fail. And I will have issues with both of my connections. And it does happen periodically throughout the year. They're doing highway work, construction work, a cable gets cut, a pole goes down, lots of accidents can happen. Why is a game company responsible for that? They're not. They're not. So 30% of the world doesn't have broadband. And I'm one of those 30%. I don't have reliable broadband. I don't live in a city where I have like co-carnage internet, where I have always on, continual 500 gigawatt generator backing up the connections, and my internet never goes down no matter rain, slow, sleet, shine, blah. No, developers do not need to develop to the lowest common denominator. That is ignorance speaking right there. That is just not, I'm sorry. I'm going to call that out. No. That is just not true. Perfect example of this is Joel was talking about this from the testing the other day. He said, so one of the requirements for Dune Awakening, one of the, so let's take this backwards. Dune Awakening is programmed in Unreal 5. Unreal 5 is the most modern game engine of the world. It has a lot of complex shading, lighting, and other things going on. Dune Awakening is a modern game meant to be ran on modern machines. So it has a requirement of a solid state drive, solid state hard drive, whether it's a console or a PC. To optimally run the game, you must have a solid state drive. And Joel mentioned from testing that they had about 10% of the people who did the beta testing are playing on potato machines. And he said it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. There are people out there who can't afford to buy a modern machine. That's fine. But he did mention, he was like, this was in the Q&A that we did with him. He was saying, please, for the love of all things, don't try to play Dune Awakening on an old disk drive hard drive, because they literally can't run the game. It won't matter how good your graphics card is, how good your RAM is, if you're running it on an old school hard drive, not a solid state, but an old school drive, it will take so long to load zones. You'll be sitting there for minutes. Not only that, you turn around too quickly. Unity 5, well, not Unity 5, sorry, Unreal 5, as you're turning, it's trying to render assets in real time, which depends on not just the GPU, but also the CPU and the hard drive, and it'll start chunking because it can't keep up with the load times of Unreal 5. In no way, shape, or form should a game company develop a game for those 10% of players who have shitty 12-year-old computers that can't run the game. It sucks for those players, but as a game developer, you should never develop your game for those people, because they do not represent the majority. The majority drive sales. The majority drive profits. The majority allow a game studio to keep their companies employed, to keep their company employees employed, and to move development forward. If you're always trying to develop for the lowest common denominator, you're never going to succeed as a business. That's just not the way reality works. That would be like me saying, I'm going to build my restaurant around people who have peanut allergies, because that's the lowest common denominator. I'm going to develop my whole business strategy around people who have peanut allergies. No, all right, I think you're just trolling for the sake of trolling at this point. I'm no longer going to interact with JS Move, because that's an ignorant statement. So we're moving on, kids. We're not going to argue with idiots this morning. Moving on. Shooting a weak spot has a 10% chance to blind the target. Regains 10 stamina. Yeah, how come I can't run the game on my 5.5-inch floppy drive? How dare they? We'll do the piercing through enemies here. Right, hit mine. But I just paid $50 for this game, and why won't it run on my 5.5-inch hard drive? 5.5-inch disk drive, sorry. Frost's Grot Mucus. I haven't seen that before. Let's see, let's check the map. Looks like there might be a bridge over here to the left somewhere. Unless there... Is that like an elevator? I think that's an elevator. 'Tis indeed! right, we're on the right track. Hopefully we'll get another fast travel beacon up here at the edge of this town. Yes, we do. Love his armor.
Not another step. You.
Oh, we're gonna ban our first troll of the day. Goodbye, Jace Move. We don't want you here because you're being a trolly little bitch. Bye-bye. I need to speak with your people.
Not here, you don't.
Perhaps you can't follow the logic because your logic is flawed. You can't follow logic. I'm smarter than all of you because my empirical research shows that 10% of the market should drive the market because I live in my mom's basement and I know everything.
Here's the funniest thing ever, guys. I remember one time when we were developing our MMO, I had a lead programmer who was a Mac enthusiast. And he was adamant that the game have a Mac client. And I said, we're not going to waste dev dollars on developing a Mac client or a Linux client. Why not? But they represent, it's dollars. Doesn't matter. When you analyze the data, so we analyzed our audience, less than 1% of users would play on a Mac. Less than 2% would play on Linux. So that's less than 3% total would play on Mac and Linux out of the users that we had, right? Windows was 97% of the audience. In what world would we be stupid enough to waste valuable game development dollars and man hours making a game client for less than 3% or 3%-ish of our total target? That's stupidity. That's not logic. That's stupidity. That's someone who has never run a business before. That's literally taking money and burning it. You're literally taking money and just burning it. Because there is no value in developing something for 3% of a target audience. That is wasted time, wasted development dollars. Oh, those 30 people can't play on their MacBook Pro. Sorry. But the vast majority of the modern world games on a Windows PC or a Windows, laptop, a Windows operating system. It's not rocket science. That's not a me problem, RGB. That's a Mac operating systems cost 500 times more than the average PC. In what world am I trying to cater to that audience? I'm not. I'm never going to cater to the minority of people who purchase a product. That's not God. So I've realized this is when people come out of the woodwork and you can tell which people have never run a business before.
But I'm the customer. I'm always right. The customer is always right. You need to make concessions to me and my peanut allergy and my $7,000 MacBook computer and blah blah blah. I love Linux. Linux is the best operating system in the world. Blah, blah, blah.
Okay. If Linux was so cool and so awesome, why isn't 98% of the world using Linux instead of Windows? If Mac is so awesome, why aren't 98% of the world using Macs? There are reasons why Windows dominates the marketplace, and there's a reason why if you're going to develop video games for the PC, you focus on the Windows market. Common sense, kids.
Seal looks real enough. Fine. Go on in. but don't cause trouble. We don't take kindly to outsiders sticking their noses where they shouldn't.
All right. Ur Village.
Hey, you. Gefon sent you, didn't he? To summon us for the moot.
He did?
Just because we live up in the mountains doesn't mean we don't know what's happening in the wider world. Well, that works out perfectly. My father's been looking for someone for outside the tribes to help him with something. That's all I know.
Something.
He didn't tell me much, but he sounded really serious. He told me to bring the first person I came across. His name is Strana. Please, go meet him at his forge. You can't miss it.
Rise the mountain. Face the storm. Looks like that's the right person to talk to. You don't know what you're talking about, RGB. You don't.
But Steam runs on Linux. Steam runs on Linux. And it has a 72% market share of game sales. So Linux is obviously the best operating system.
The fact that a marketplace, the fucking ignorance of the chat, some of these people in chat this morning. I'm loving this. This is hilarious. We're weeding out some stupidity this morning. A marketplace platform is not a game client. It is not an operating system. It is a marketplace. The fact that a marketplace is running a specific operating system or backend means nothing. It's a marketplace. Seriously. Come on. We're not even, that's not even in the same conversation at this point. Yeah, that's another, yeah. Linux is great for running servers and infrastructure, but we're talking operating systems. Windows PC dominates the operating systems of the computers that people play games on. That is not the same fucking conversation as what a marketplace uses to sell their games and what they're using on the back end for their service and stuff. Like, come on. Come on. Common sense. We're talking people who play games. Where do they play games? They play games on Windows PCs, on Windows operating systems. Why do they play games on Windows operating system? Because it is the far superior operating system for everyone. Mac costs way too much, so it's out of the reach of 98% of the population. Linux is extremely niche, and again, only really used by people who are into programming and like the hardcore nerds of the world who are into programming and everything else. They'll run Linux operating systems. But when you're talking about developing games, this is the conversation we were having. When you're talking about developing games and selling games to consumers, Windows PC dominates. When you're talking PC development, we're not talking consoles right now. We're talking, you're making a PC game. You're not going to sell to Linux. You're not going to sell to Mac. You're going to sell to PC because that's the smart business decision, because that's what the vast majority of the market are playing on. Trying to argue that
Steam has a 72% market share of game sales and it's running on Linux.
That's not even the same fucking conversation.
Cruise ships use Linux to run the operating system that the captains use to drive the ships, and it's 100% of the cruise ship industry, so that matters.
It's like cruise ships, PC gaming, not the same conversation. I gotta get a cup of coffee, guys. You guys are killing me. All right, back to it. I need more coffee to deal with the ignorance in chat this morning. Linux is the best operating system. It sounds exactly like that programmer I had to deal with.
Mac operating system is the best in the world, and I can't. Why wouldn't you? I want to develop for Mac.
Coffee is always good. Yeah, the issue, JK, is that every time you say something about, like, every time you try to have a conversation with a Linux lover, they'll immediately, it's like trying to talk with a Mac lover. Like, they'll immediately get all defensive about how their operating system is so much superior to Windows. And then they get offended when you're like, well, the market doesn't show that. Like, the market shows that Windows is the majority share owner in terms of marketplace, people who own PCs. Like, it's just facts. But my empirical evidence from my basement shows that this. And they'll pull up some niche thing like cruise ships, like I said. It's like, no. It's just, no. We're talking people who buy PCs to play video games, or the random person who has a PC they bought for school that they're going to play a game on in their spare time at their college, university, or whatever. Those people are all running Windows operating systems. They don't know about, or could they care less about, things like Linux and Mac and all this other stuff. They bought a cheap laptop to go to school with or to work from home on, and those all run Windows. And that's the market, But this comes back to, this is a great learning moment for a lot of people in terms of why do so many businesses fail. Because you have people like what we've seen in chat this morning starting businesses. Those are the Kickstarters that fail, by the way. You get a bunch of people who have ideas and they go launch a Kickstarter and they're like, I have this great idea, but they've never run a business and they don't consult with anybody first. They just go throw up an idea and then they get some money, and then within 6 months the money's gone because they didn't factor in taxes, they didn't factor in accountants, they didn't factor in licensing, they didn't factor in shipping costs, they didn't factor in tariffs, they didn't factor in the 40% that you lose because Kickstarter takes their fee and PayPal takes their fee and the government takes their fee. Like, there is a reason so many businesses fail, and it's because people don't have a business acumen and they've never done anything, but they have an idea or they think that they know someone, and their mommy told them when they were a kid, their mommy told them, "You're going to be special, honey. You're number one. You're going to do everything you set your mind to do, honey. You are so special. You are going to win. You're my little winner. Yes, you are." And then they go out in the real world and they've never faced adversity in their life. And they think that air conditioning is a human right and that broadband internet is something that everyone has. And they think that having an Xbox is a human right. And it's like they don't know what the rest of the world is like. Like, it's just, I feel like it's a ranty morning, kids.
Egil sent you, did he? I'm Stroner, a blacksmith. What brings you to our village?
Gerfna sent me. He's calling for the moot.
That kind of order should go straight to Thrigvi, though I doubt he'd be eager to leave his throne. Until a new chieftain is chosen, Thrigvi won't attend the moot.
So what's going on with your chieftain?
Thrigvi always dreamed of surpassing mortal strength, of becoming as mighty as the giants. He became obsessed.
Correct,
with
Yvonne.
the
We are
lone
not
pillar
special
near our
snowflakes.
village. The Ulfar might not be known for their writing, but we have our legends. Thrigvi found out the pillar was a place where giants entrusted their souls to the Fore-dwellers, whatever that means. So we had a throne forged into the pillar and sat on it during a weird night. What happened after that changed everything for our tribe.
Okay. Yeah, Transcend. That's kind of what we were talking about earlier in the economics discussion, is that the cost to develop something for a minority is more than you're going to earn from those people. So when someone says something like, "Yeah, but those 10% represent millions of dollars," even if in the example of a large enough market share where 10% could be potentially worth millions, the cost to produce in terms of man hours, logistics, manufacturing, etc., 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 will always be more than what the minority bring in terms of revenue. So it is never worth it to focus on the lowest common denominator, because you will die as a business. That's not rocket science, kids. So I was saying, like, try to make a restaurant around people who have peanut allergies. You'll be out of business in a week, because you're developing a business around the lowest common denominator. The vast majority of people do not have peanut allergies. So if you're trying to focus a business on only the people who have peanut allergies, you're going to have 10 clients and that's it. But your restaurant costs, maybe there's 3 employees, you got to get gas, you got to have electric, you had to buy all the machines, you had to rent the space or buy the place, you've got overhead, you've got all these costs, and you're trying to serve food to 10 people. Duh, you're going to go out of business in a week. Like, you have to be able to make money if you want to survive as a business. And the only way to make money as a business is to focus on where is the product that's going to sell the most. Find a market. Make sure that that market is profitable. Yeah, mass producing at a low cost.